This is an IGCSE Edexcel Geography Paper 2 Human Geography talk through from June 22. Economic activity and energy. Identify one advantage of using geothermal energy as a source of energy. Remember, it's a renewable source that uses heat from the Earth's mantle. It uses the power of the sun, no. It uses the power of the wind, no. It is a type of non-renewable energy, absolutely not. That's something like natural gas, coal. It is a type of renewable energy, yes. Define the term renewable energy. It's an energy that can be used again and again. Identify one way to make transport more sustainable. Increasing the use of powerful petrol engines, no. Increasing air routes, these are just silly. Increasing the use of electric battery technology, yes, because that has far less emissions compared with regular fuel sources. Increasing the size of motorways, no, because again that would involve increased resource consumption. The answer here is C. Study figure 1A in the resource booklet. Suggests one reason why the activity shown might be considered informal employment. So here we have figure 1A, informal employment in Kolkata, India. So these women are sitting on the street, obviously selling their fish. So it's the fact that they're selling the food in the street rather than in a designated market. And we know that they could easily be moved on should the government wish that. Not that they should, obviously. They should be allowed to sell their fish. So why is it informal employment? Because they are selling food or fish in the street as opposed to a designated market. State one advantage of informal employment, mainly that it reduces unemployment. Also, you don't have the same cost, do you, if you don't have to pay for a market stall. You're unlikely to pay tax because I assume a lot of it is cash in hand. So that means that that person will receive more money, but the government will receive less money, and it often requires less skill. But you know what? I feel really strongly about this because I'm always traveling and I went to India, and honestly, the food they make is the most skilled food I've ever had. But anyway, this isn't the time for me to talk about that. So I'm just going to say it reduces unemployment. Explain two factors that affect global energy demand. So that's all about how much energy we use as a society. So obviously increasing population means that there's greater demand for energy, such as fuel for our cars. We are increasing our technology every single day, aren't we? And this leads to a greater consumption of energy. We are becoming increasingly aware of climate change, global warming, and so that increases our demand for renewable energy resources such as wind and solar. So it's 4 marks, so we need to make 2 separate points and expand on them. Study figure 1B in the resource booklet. Explain the relationship shown between population growth and food supply, 3 marks. This is Malthus's theory of population growth and food supply over time. So we can see here there's a linear relationship with the food supply. So over time there's a gradual increase in food supply. However, this curve here shows an exponential growth in population. And therefore when you reach this point of crisis, you find that population outstrips food supply. So this is when we really reach an issue. Before this point, everything's fine in terms of food supply meeting the population's requirements. Explain 2 factors that affect the location of quaternary sector employment. So just to remind you, quaternary sector employment is all about industry based on human knowledge, which involves technology, information, financial planning, research, and development. So ask yourself, what would affect the development of a tech company, for example? Well, for sure, reliable internet access, because so many of these companies rely on the internet to operate their business. You might want a large area of land available to allow room for growth. Obviously, good transport connections so their workforce can easily reach them. Study figure 1C in the resource booklet, analyse the reasons for the changes in the percentage of people employed in the secondary sector. So when we talk about secondary sector, we're really looking at people employed in the manufacturing and construction industries. You can also think about food industry as an example of secondary sector employment. Let's check out 1C. How am I going to turn that around then? Are we going to have to look at this sideways? Wow, I'm so techie. So really we're comparing developed countries, the United Kingdom, United States. It's quite interesting to really compare those to the developing countries of Ghana and Cambodia, because if we look at the lines, we can see that for those developed countries, we see a steady decline in the percentage of people employed in the secondary sector, as opposed to somewhere like Cambodia, this yellow line, which shows a steady rise in the secondary sector employment. And then China's going to be different. If we look at China in the blue line, they've experienced different rates of growth in the percentage of the secondary sector, with a rapid increase over here from 2001 to 2012. So China's kind of doing its own thing. To finish off getting the rest of our marks, we just want to make a few general points how the relative size of the secondary sector employment is a good indicator of economic development. As I've already said, as a country becomes more developed, typically there'll be a shift from primary sector employment to more secondary sector employment. So I'm going to start with my general points and then pull out bits of data from that graph. And I'm going to use that to show secondary. This means primary. Oh no, I've been spelling employment wrong the whole time. That makes me so sad. And now talking about the data. So figure 1C shows Figure 1C shows that for developing countries such as Cambodia, there is a steady increase in percentage employed in the secondary sector. And then we could talk about the fact that China has its own trend, but I've already got 4 marks, so I won't write that here. Rural environments, identify one characteristic associated with a tropical forest. Arid conditions, no, that means dry. Tropics are definitely very humid. Low temperature, no, they're hot. High humidity, yes. Strong winds, no. Define the term biome. It's a plant and animal community covering a large area of the Earth's surface. Identify the meaning of the term organic farming. Even if you're not sure, do use your common sense here. A farming that only produces genetically modified crops. Do we really think people are going to be paying more for GM crops? No. Farming that uses chemical fertilizers? No. The whole point of organic farming is that it's natural. Farming that does not require irrigation. That's to do with watering. All farming really requires watering, so it's not that. Farming that does not use chemical fertilizers, yes. They'll tend to use more natural fertilizers such as manure. Study figure 2A in the resource booklet suggests how this forest ecosystem might provide goods for people. Oh right, well here we are, a temperate forest in the United States of America. They're cutting down, I don't know if that's conifer trees, but the point is they are getting that wood so that can be used for building materials. That timber could also be used to make furniture and other goods. So the forest ecosystem picture shows us that first of all machinery is cutting down the trees producing timber, and then that timber can be used actually you want to stick with furniture and goods really, just because of the wording of the question. State one advantage of using genetically modified GM crops. Well, sometimes they have a gene for something like golden rice, which means they have vitamin A, which means they have a greater nutritional benefit to the end consumers. So that golden rice with that vitamin A stops night blindness, a horrible affliction. You could have also said that the crops are genetically modified to produce high yields, to be more disease resistant, to require less use of pesticides, and they tend to grow faster and be more tolerable to climatic conditions. For people living in a developed country, explain 2 strategies used to make rural life more sustainable. I mean, they've already told us about organic farming, so why not? Let's switch to organic farming. And what you actually find when people do organic farming, that they're able to charge higher prices because people are prepared to pay for that. In developed countries, you'll often find pick your own. So where I live, there's pick your own strawberry farms, blueberry farms. And again, that can compensate for falling prices of crops and increase the profitability of the farm. Study figure 2b in the resource booklet suggests one reason for the trends shown. So percentage of employment in agriculture for selected countries. So for all 3 countries, we see a decline in the number of people employed in agriculture. France sees the biggest decline, and the United States is much shallower in terms of that gradient. Remember, we need to state some figures to back this up and then also provide an explanation. So why has France seen a decrease in the number of people working in farming? Mainly that could just be due to those people no longer willing to do such a difficult job. For the US, they're looking for an answer which describes this smaller decrease as being that people have already, because if you actually look, it already started off as a lower number at 1991, so they may have already shifted to employment in other sectors. Explain how governments and NGOs manage challenges in rural environments in developing or emerging countries. So governments will be trying to improve the infrastructure by improving roads to more remote areas and ensure that crops can actually reach their market. We could talk about NGOs such as WaterAid, which provide training for local people to build their toilets in order to improve sanitation facilities and help prevent the spread of waterborne diseases. Study figure 2c, analyse the factors that can lead to rural changes in developing or emerging countries. So as always with these questions, these 8 markers, we're going to talk a little bit about what the rural changes are from both an economic, social, and environmental point of view. So we're going to give a very general background to this topic, and then we'll actually back up our answer using information in figure 2c. So here's views from a farmer in Uganda in Africa. I've recently got a smartphone so I can check local market crop prices. There's so much work to do, and many of the younger people have left to work in the city. So this immediately indicates labour supply issues because it's saying that there aren't enough people doing the farming jobs because most of them are seeking better and better paid employment in the cities. Droughts are becoming worse in some areas, making it more difficult to produce enough. These are environmental issues. So with increasing drought means that farmers won't be able to grow enough to actually sell at market to make money for themselves and their families. We'll start by saying there are a range of economic, social, and environmental factors leading to a change in rural areas. Let's point out that figure 2c in many rural areas of developing countries. labour shortages are created by young people moving out to the cities in search of jobs. Which are better paid. Then we're pulling out the fact that climate change has led to more droughts. So what rural changes will that bring about? It means that people need to invest in genetically modified crops that are more resistant to drought. So we've made a good start on this question, but look, analyse the factors that can lead to rural changes. So we've just mentioned NGOs, and NGOs are incredibly important in rural areas which aren't fully supported by government initiatives. So what can NGOs do? Well, they raise money through fundraising, and then they can use that money to help educate the farmers. They can use that money to buy them new equipment, new machinery, such as tractors, which will increase their crop yields and therefore mean that they can take more crops to market. Urban environments. Identify one advantage of building on a brownfield site. So remember, this is a site that's already been built on. Land and buildings need to be cleared first. That's definitely not an advantage. Reduces loss of countryside. Yep, we want to conserve those greenfield sites really. State one problem associated with rapid urbanisation. If we're rapidly building new settlements, then what's going to happen is you'll have an increased population moving in, and that will lead to traffic congestion. They give lots of other options in the mark scheme, such as overpopulation, shortage of housing, high demand for services, development of squatter settlements. Identify one feature often found in the rural urban fringe, a business park. Yes, actually, let's go there. High street shops will be found in the central business district. Bus station, again, very central. Same with the skyscraper buildings. But yeah, they'll tend to build these business parks in lower value land. Study figure 3A. Suggest one factor that may have affected the decision to locate the factory in this area. Aerial photo of a factory in New Orleans, USA. The first thing that strikes me here is how flat the land is, which makes it the perfect place to build this factory. It's so much cheaper for the business if they don't have to spend money using diggers to shift soil. Define the term megacity. This is a city with a population of over 10 million people. Explain two factors that have led to suburbanisation. Suburbanisation is the outward growth of urban development which may engulf surrounding villages and towns. So what might encourage that? Well, first of all, prices of land and property in the city centre have become prohibitively expensive, so people seek alternative places to live which is cheaper. Why else would people want to live on the outskirts? Maybe because they're worried about air pollution or crime in the city centres, meaning they're moving to safer suburbs. Another reason that suburbanisation works for so many people is, say their office is located in the central business district, but they're doing an awful lot of their work remotely online, then it doesn't matter if they have so far to travel, because obviously they're working in their home office. Study 3B suggests one reason for the trend shown. Population and predicted population of selected megacities from 2000 to 2035. We have the cities of Dhaka, Chongqing, Manila, and there's an arrow showing the predicted population. So we can see, wow, look at this up here. Dhaka in particular is expected to have a population of over 35 million. Oh my goodness, that's so many people. So what would be the cause of that? Well, obviously very high birth rates leading to massive population growth. Manila is also showing an increase in its population. If we look at the numbers, it's expected to grow from 10 million to around 19 million by 2035. And the most likely reason for that is due to rapid urbanisation associated with rural-urban migration. So again, people leaving those farms in those villages. And it's true to say that for all three of these megacities, we're going to see a significant increase in their population over this time frame. Because it's only asking us about one reason, just pick, do you want to talk about Dhaka or Manila, or kind of a general trend for all three cities? I'm going to go for Dhaka. Dhaka is likely to reach over 35 million people by 2035 due to high birth rates leading to huge population growth. Explain 2 strategies used to manage challenges in squatter settlements. Well, some of these strategies are good strategies. Other ones that the governments employ is literally just to flatten these squatter settlements and hope that the people move on. But obviously that leaves loads of people homeless. So that's certainly one of the government strategies. Much more positive government strategies include site and service schemes where local people are able to buy a piece of land cheaply so they can build their own home, or self-help schemes where we can actually improve the quality of these squatter settlements and mean that the infrastructure is much better through the government's provision of cheap building materials or loans. NGOs are always involved to help reduce poverty through education. Again, they can provide funding. So let's go in with the bad one first of all, which is governments bulldoze squatter settlements, leaving thousands of people homeless. Governments have site and service schemes where local people are able to buy land cheaply and build their homes. Study figure 3C, analyse the environmental challenges facing urban areas in developed countries. So again, with these 8 markers, we're going to make some general points about the challenges, and they've got to be environmental. So we're looking at pollution. That could be carbon dioxide leading to global warming. It could be sulfur dioxide contributing to acid rain. Could be just dealing with waste, so landfill, as well as destruction of greenfield sites, loss of habitat. So now we'll look at figure 3C and use all that information to back up our answer. We want to introduce a new scheme to limit the number of vehicles visiting the city. Yep, that will help reduce emissions. There's a new recycling facility to try and reduce the amount of waste going to landfill. So that suggests that the amount of waste produced in urban areas or developed countries is a massive challenge, and therefore we need more ways to deal with that, which are sustainable. We want to find ways of using more renewable energy to reduce CO2 emissions. This indicates that we have massive issues with environmental pollution from a global warming perspective with all these CO2 emissions. So we're going to start with a generic point stating that there are a range of environmental challenges facing urban environments in developed countries, which include air pollution, waste disposal, energy use, and lack of green space. And that's always going to be the good place to start, because these really are mini essays, and the wording of the question is analyse the environmental challenges. So zooming in on air pollution, urban areas contain lots of cars which release carbon dioxide and particulates into the atmosphere, which may cause respiratory diseases. Give some facts from any case studies you've studied. So, for example, in London, over 9,000 people a year die from respiratory diseases. Dealing with waste disposal is a huge issue. As waste occupies landfill sites. And releases toxic gases when burnt. New York produces over 12,000 tonnes of household waste every day. Providing enough energy is an extremely difficult task. Figure 3C suggests looking to renewable energy sources, which will also reduce CO2 emissions. So that links nicely with the issues with air pollution. Figure 3C also suggests that the number of vehicles entering urban centres is a problem, and there have been moves to limit their numbers.